day. Welcome to ENG 303 Study Session 5. The centrality of the verb in a sentence. Introduction. In linguistics, literature, the verb is given as a central element in sentences. What relationship does the verb have with words in a sentence? In this section, we probe into this by looking at how words in a sentence are woven round the verb in it. In this sense, we shall be discussing predicate argument structure, thematic roles and nether marking, as well as trace theory. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to 1. Show the relationship between a verb and adjacent nouns. 2. Differentiate between different classes of verbs. 3. Differentiate between argument positions. 4. Identify traces of movement in sentences. And 5. Identify different roles nouns perform in the sentences. Pretest. 1. What is an argument? 2. What is a trace? 3. What is a data role? Content. The words in a sentence are related in different ways. Most of them, especially the nouns, which are technically called arguments, have some relationship with the verb. The verb determines the syntactic interpretations of such words as subject, object, complement, and so on, and the semantic interpretation as agent, patient, goal, instrument, and so on in the sentence. Finally, the section discusses the concept of trace, which relates the history of movement from a particular position, especially at the object of or object positions of the sentence. Predicate argument structure. Both conceptually and structurally, the verb occupies a central position in sentences. Conceptually, the verb is the most important word in a sentence because it carries the action. Thus, it is possible to have only a word as a sentence as an imperative sentences such as come, go, jump, and so on. Structurally, the verb requires a subject to its left in a structure and an object or adjunct or both to its right. Structurally then, the structure of a sentence is subject, verb, object, or adjunct. The verb is called the predicate in traditional grammar, and this meaning is maintained in this discussion. Since the verb usually occurs with nouns, we need to discuss the nouns. The noun and other constituents, such as clauses that behave as nouns, are classified and given the term arguments. When a noun or a nominal occurs as the object of a verb, it is believed that the noun is under the control of that verb. Such nouns or arguments are called internal arguments. If, however, an argument occurs as the subject of a sentence, it is called external arguments. Internal and external argument, therefore, refer to the relationship a nominal bears to the verb in the same sentence. Consider this sentence, for instance. 1. Adam loved Eve. In the above sentence, Adam is the external argument while Eve is the internal argument. In essence, The concept of predicate argument structure refers to relationships that obtain between predicates and arguments. Three classes of predicates have been identified in the literature. These are monadic, dyadic, and triadic predicates. They are classified based on the number of arguments they co-occur with. Let us discuss them. 1. Monadic predicates. Monadic predicates refer to verbs which co-occur with only one argument. For example, the subjects. This means that these verbs are purely intransitive verbs, as in to. 2a. The bird flew. B. Biola snores. C. The bomb explodes. The verbs in each of these sentences are intransitive, so they take only such arguments. 2. Dyadic predicates. Dyadic predicates refer to verbs that occur between internal and external arguments. For example, subject and object nouns, as in 3 below. 3a. James Hadley Chase wrote many novels. B. Sunday drove the car. C. These men knew that the president was angry. The verbs in italics occur between two arguments. Note particularly C, in which the internal argument is a noun clause. 3. Triadic predicates. Triadic predicates relate three arguments to a noun within the same sentence. For example, 4a. Eve gave Adam an apple. B. Abu called Dixon a liar. C. Wura showed Kola his book. The sentences 4a to c show that all the arguments have a relationship with the verb in their respective sentences. Rather than write extensive commentaries on verbs, we can present them in a form of logic recognized in the literature as follows. Monadic predicates. 5. A. Fly, verb. B. Snore, verb. C. Explode, verb. 2. Dyadic predicates. 6a. Write, verb. B. Drive, verb. C. Know, verb. Triadic predicates. 7. A. Give, verb. B. Call, verb. C. Show, verb. Note that the external argument is identified by underscore and it carries the tag 1. Thematic relations and theta marking. The centrality of the verb in a sentence is brought to the fore in the last section. In this section, this is further discussed as we look at the structural and meaning relations between the verb and arguments that relate to it. The essence, since the verb is central, it means that the adjoining arguments are dependent on it for their full interpretation. In syntactic terms, therefore, a verb assigns thematic roles or theta roles to the argument in a sentence. In other words, it marks, theta marks them. The role the verb assigned to a noun defines the thematic relations the noun has with the verb. This may be theme, benefactive, agent, patient, source, and so on. Here is a discussion of some well-known theta roles. A. Agent. The agent theta role refers to an argument that behaves as an actor in a sentence and is capable of taking its own decision. 8a. Duke peeled the oranges. B. Noma folded the paper. The italized nouns in these examples bear agent theta role because they can physically perform the action if they so wish. B. Patient. The patient refers to a subject noun which receives the action stated in the verb. Such nouns are either animate or inanimate. 9a. Simon studied engineering. B. The stray bullet eat pedestrians. Both the engineering and pedestrians receive the actions of the verb in their respective sentences. C. Instrument. The instrument is the object with which an action is performed. 10a. Segun constructed a toy car with tins. B. The hunter killed the rabbit with a catapult. Tins and a catapult in both sentences bear the instrument theta role as they were used in carrying out the actions of the verbs in their respective sentences. D. Goal. Goal refers to the entity towards which motion takes place. A. Bisi threw a pillow at Pius. B. Ezekome took the money to his boss. Pius and his boss bear the theta roles of goals in these sentences because the pillow and money are directed at them respectively. E. Source. Source refers to a noun that indicates the place from which motion takes place. Consider the following examples. 12a. Shade brought the oranges from the farm. B. Arikpo returned from Abraka last week. The farm and Abraka are the respective sources of oranges and Arikpo in the sentences above. Hence, they bear source theta role. F. Benefactive. The benefactive theta role is borne by the entity in whose favor an event occurred. 13a. She sewed the cardigan for her child. B. Wale cooked rice for her. The benefactive theta role is borne by her child and her, which are the entities that benefit from the actions stated in the verbs. G. Locative. The locative theta role refers to the entity that names the place where something is. 14a. The children stayed indoors. B. Salman kept the money in the wardrobe. The italized nouns are the positions where the actions described by the verb took place. So the items have locative theta role. H. Theme. Theme refers to the subject matter of discourse. It serves as the focus of the sentences as in 15a. The full-grained. B. Breast milk is the best food for infants. The topics of discussion or the themes in these sentences are italized. They bear the theme theta role. I. Experiencer. The experiencer is the individual that feels or perceives an event. 16a. Amakri has malaria. B. Yuri perceived the odor. In these examples, both Amakri and Yuri bear experiencer theta role. Meanwhile, these are occasions where two or more theta roles are assigned to an argument, as in the following. 17. Eve, agent, gave Adam an apple. Source, goal or beneficiary, patient. This means that there is no rigid demarcations between the roles assigned to nouns. A noun can bear a theta role in a sentence and bear another role in another sentence. It may also bear more than one theta role. Trace theory. We have noted earlier in this lecture that a frame is set for phrase structure rules to apply in constructing a sentence. In this sense, lexical items are inserted into specific notes. However, while lexical items such as nouns, verbs, and adjectives are inserted into positions such as subject, qualifier, and predicate positions of a sentence at the deep structure, not every node of a sentence is filled. For instance, there are empty nodes at the sentence initial position, which makes it possible for a moved item to be disposited there and leave a gap, or more appropriately, a trace of movement behind. This is the basis of the concept of trace theory. But what do we mean by trace? Have you ever walked on a beach? And have you taken time to look at the sand closely? What did you see there? Footprints. There are several footprints which show that several people had walked over the sand. If you haven't been to a beach, at least you must have taken a bath and walked into your room. Certainly there must have been wet prints or the soles of your feet, indicating to someone who passes by that someone had left the bathroom for your room. This can be described as marks you left behind at a place you had been. This is the import of the content of this topic. Similar phenomenon as above occurs in sentences. An item may be displaced from one position to another, for example, moved, or extracted from one position and deposited in another empty position. The position from which an item is extracted, extraction site, is our concern here. After movement, the absence of such items is usually felt. Hence, it is said that the word left a shadow, footprint, or trace of itself at the extraction site. How is this possible? Consider the example below. 18a. Busy wrote what? B. What did Busy write? C. Busy wrote an essay. In 18, write is a verb which requires an object. In 18a and b, the verb write takes an object what and an essay. In 18b, the verb occurs without its object. However, the impact of the object is still felt. Since one must write something, it is certain that there is a gap after write, as in 18b, when neither an essay or what is in the object position. This information is represented technically as in D, with T standing at the extraction site as the trace of the moved element. B. What did BC write? You will notice that what does not occur in place of an essay in A. It is an indication that it is a question word, and it can substitute for information that we do not yet know. This is why it is used in forming questions as in B. Since it occurs sentence finally in A, but sentence initially in B, we assume that it shares the same syntactic function as the object of write in C, and in B, it leaves a gap as its extraction site shown in D. To show that what really originated from the object position of the verb write a mark is subtracted to both T and what. This is called co-indexing. When we co-index two items in a structure, it means that those two items refer to the same entity and therefore have the same interpretation. If you look at the relationship of sentences A and B above, you will notice that despite the displacement of what from the sentence final position in B to the sentence initial position in A, there is no change in the meaning of the sentence. These facts confirm that what originated from the final position and T is therefore its trace. To buttress our discussion, here are further examples. 19. A. Ade can cook. B. Can Ade cook? 20. A. You will say W ate something. B. What will you say? The A sentences in these examples represent the original ordering of elements in these sentences. However, in B sentences, there are gaps, which shows that elements have been moved out to some other places, and these elements are located at the sentence initial positions of B sentences. We can then say that the B sentences are derived from their A counterparts. The gaps represent the traces of the moved elements, and it will be proper to put T in the gaps as follows. 21. A. Can Ade cook? B. What will you say? While the T represent traces, we also need to identify which element moves from which position. Hence, an index is put as subscript to identical elements. For example, elements that have the same reference as in B above. Moreover, a particular item, especially a WH word, may move more than once in a structure. This is as a result of the syntactic principle that states that an item cannot cross more than one bounding node at a time, and it cannot use a path already used by another moved element. Such items then move one step at a time. In so doing, they leave more than one trace behind. Here is an example. 22. A. What will Bill say? Kate did it. B. Whom does Kunle believe that Shola praised? In these examples, what and whom are the moved elements? They left the sentence final positions and made temporary landings at the positions preceding the embedded sentences. Finally, they land at sentence initial position. Notice that they left traces in the positions where they vacated, and all these positions and the moved items have the same index because they are all co-referential. Syntactically, therefore, all the items form a chain because they are all linked together. As a chain, there is a move element which serves at the head of the chain, a trace in the medial position, and a tail of the chain, which is the original source of the moved word. Hence, we have something like the following. WH word. Summary. In this lecture, we have studied the relationship verbs between and nouns around them. We learned that a verb determines the position of items in a sentence. It assigns theta roles to them and generally makes it possible for them to get accurate interpretation. Finally, when an internal argument is displaced, the verb that assigns theta roles to it enables language users to understand that there is a residue or trace of movement there. We've come to the end of study session 5. Thanks for listening.